The Gemara in Masechet Yevamot Daf Samach Dalet brings a very tragic story about the 24,000 or 12,000 Zugot Talmidim which Rabbi Akiva had, and they died between Pesach and Atzeret. Pesach and Atzeret. Yeah? So I call it a tragic event because we have to realize that the Torah which we have today in the world, is due to the 5 students which Rabbi Akiva never gave up and went down south to find students to teach them Torah, and all the Torah we have today is coming from those 5 students. Now you imagine, had the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva survived, and they would have opened yeshivot, and they would have transmitted the Torah further, can you imagine how much Torah we'd have in the world today? Now this is one of the most tragic historic events which had an impact in the future of Am Yisrael. Now, it's become a custom, and this is undisputed. It may not be mentioned in the Rambam, but it's undisputed amongst all communities that this period of time between Pesach and Shavuot is a period of time of mourning for that tragic event which we just spoke about. The Bet Yosef brings a student of the Rashba. He seems to be the source of the customs of mourning in this period of time between Pesach and Shavuot. He was called Rabbi Yoshua ben Shoib, Ibn Shoib. He was a student of the Rashba who lived in Spain, near France, in Spain. He's one of the students of the Rashba. And he's mentioned in the Bet Yosef. Rabbi Yosef Karo quotes him there. And he brings about this custom about mourning in this period of time between Pesach and Shavuot. Shulchan Aruch rules like that and brings these customs about not having haircuts, not marriages don't take place in this period of time. But I just want to discuss a specific point as about the restriction of the custom of not having haircuts or shaving our beards during the Sfirah. The Bet Yosef, when he brings Rabbi Yoshua Ibn Shoib, he brings that he himself wrote in his Derashot of Chag Pesach, in his book, that there are 2 customs to how to calculate these 33 days of mourning which we have between Pesach and Shavuot. There is one custom which we tend to follow, and that's his conclusion, and that's what the Bet Yosef brings, is that they died at Peros Atzeret, which is 2 weeks, 15 days prior to Shavuot. They stopped dying. Peros Atzeret means half of a month before Atzeret. That's the text which some of the Rishonim, some of the Geonim have, that they stopped dying approximately 15 days before Shavuot. And that gives us 34 days of mourning, and that's why us Sfaradim do not have any haircuts, no marriages, until the 34th day of the Omer in the morning, as Miktzat Yom Kekulo, and the Avelut finishes on the 34th day. However, he brings a second custom, which calculates it slightly different, in the name of the Tosfot, that we calculate the days between Pesach and Shavuot, which are regular weekdays, meaning not Yom Tov, not Shabbat, not Rosh Hodesh, because in those days, the students of Rabbi Akiva didn't die. So they have a text in the Talmud that is from Pesach until Shavuot, like it's brought down in our Talmud Bavli, but the calculation is that on special days, they never died. Whether it's Shabbat, or whether it's Yom Tov, or whether it's Rosh Chodesh, they never died. So if you deduct the days of Shabbatot, Yom Tov, and Rosh Chodeshim, the 2 days of Chodesh of Iyyar, you will be left with 33 days, not 34 days. So they take 33 days of mourning, and it's brought down that they pick and choose this other custom, whether to keep the first 33 days right after Pesach, including Pesach, or they keep the second 33 days, which is from Rosh Hodesh Iyyar onwards until 3 days before Shavuot. There is, I wouldn't say it's a misconception, but there is a famous Maharam, Rabbi Menachem Lunzano, which brings a Radvaz in his book Shtei Yadot. Yeah, he wrote it in the form of Etzbaot. There's a question whether he was born in Italy or in Turkey, but it goes back quite a long time ago, 400 years ago. And he brings the tshuva of the Radvaz, that Radvaz brings that he used to shave, he used to have haircuts shaved on Rosh Chodesh Iyyar. And based on that, they want to allow, for instance, this year, where Rosh Chodesh falls on Erev Shabbat, to interrupt those 34 days of the Sephirah, which we count, and to allow on Rosh Chodesh to have a haircut. However, if you look inside them, the Maram Lunzano, and the Tshuva of the Radvaz, you will realize that the Radvaz was actually following an opinion which he used to have a haircuts right through the month of Nisan. Because he held Nisan is time when you don't say Tahanun, and therefore this Avelut shouldn't be applicable, and that's clearly not our custom. And the reason why I'm saying this, that even though the Kaf HaChaim brings the Maram Lunzano, which brings the Radvaz, and he brings that the Pri Hadash actually complemented this custom of having haircuts on Rosh Chodesh Iyyar. However, the Bet Yosef was fully aware of such a custom, and he rejected it. And the Bet Yosef picked on the right point. He says, that idea is a mistake for the simple reason that that's only going to the opinions where you don't start the morning counting until after Rosh Chodesh Iyyar. And that's why, or they thought they didn't die on special occasions like Rosh Chodesh. So they took that idea, oh, you don't die on Rosh Chodesh, there was no death, so therefore you're allowed to have haircuts. But we know that that's not the practice. The Bet Yosef was fully aware of that, and yet he rejected that. And we are bound to the rulings of the Bet Yosef, since we don't have a custom otherwise. The only practice which we have amongst the Sephardi communities, unless someone will tell me he's Italian or Turkish and he's got a clear custom, not like that. The old practice by the Sephardim is to start the counting from second day of Pesach until the 34th day with no interruption whatsoever. And that's what the Bet Yosef says, ta'utu beyadam. Now, if the Bet Yosef testified that it's ta'ut, it's a mistake, and we are bound to the practices of the Bet Yosef in this case, because we don't know of any other practice to that, then you have to be a little bit courageous to allow against the Bet Yosef to have haircuts this year, even though it falls on Erev Shabbat, Rosh Hodesh. I'm not so concerned about Tzavat Rabbi Yehuda Hasid, which is quite important, but we generally are lenient in Tzavat Rabbi Yehuda Hasid when Rosh Chodesh falls on Erev Shabbat. For Kvod Shabbat, we generally, otherwise people should try and be particular to keep what the instruction of Rabbi Yehuda Hasid of not having haircuts and not cutting nails on Rosh Chodesh. But if it falls on Erev Shabbat, so this year falls on Erev Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, so we wouldn't be concerned about Tzavat Rabbi Yehuda Hasid, according to our minhag, the Sfaradim. However, for the reason which the Shulchan Aruch brings, which is ta'utu beyadam, Rosh Chodesh is not a time. I mean, since when we've got a practice on every Rosh Chodesh to have haircuts that we should interrupt for Rosh Chodesh Iyyar in the middle of morning? Now, the reason why I gave this introduction is we have to understand the importance of this Avelut. It may be referred to as Avelut Yeshana. This concept of Avelut Yeshana, when it's a practice amongst all of Israel, is very weak. That's only when you have a real doubt. When you have a clear of Yosef Karo saying, Ta'utu beyadam, then what is the excuse of Avelut Yeshana? This is what we follow. So, if you look carefully, you will see the Maram Lunzan and the Radvaz were talking. The Radvaz would even have haircuts on the whole of month of Nisan because you don't say Tachanun. That's not our practice. That's not what we follow. So, since we don't have a clear custom to have haircuts on Rosh Chodesh Iyyar, Therefore, we have to maintain the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch, which that's contemporary poskim, other than the Ashkenazim, who tend to follow the other reckoning, and some of them don't even start until after Rosh Hodesh. They do those 33 days, or they do the first half. So therefore, they find some leniencies around the idea of Rosh Hodesh. However, based on our form of counting, which is at Pros Atzeret, we have a full Avelut from Pesach until the 34th of the Omer. It's quite debateful, the other custom, as on one hand we clearly say they didn't die during Yamim Tovim, Shabbatot or Rosh Chodashim, yet when we count the mourning period, we include those days in the mourning period. That needs explanation on its own. However, it's not relevant to us, since the common Sephardi practice is to keep from Pesach until Lad Ba'omer, 34th of the Omer in the morning.